And welcome to another episode of the Kat Mak Talk Show. I have Bex Howells. With me today, she has come all the way from England / New Zealand / now Melbourne. You are a women's influencer income coach. So you're here to make a change to the world for women out there and gender pay gaps. So I want to know how this started and why this has come about. When I was younger, a long time ago, I was told that I was too pretty to be in the industry that I wanted to be in. So therefore, I will never get paid what the big bad boys were getting paid. And that made me a person that probably transpired to the person I'm today. So maybe they did me a favor. However, I didn't have to go through all the ish in between for me to then come back and find myself because somebody said, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too whatever. Because it should definitely be on merit. Bex, I'm handing it over to you. Go for it.
Thank you. Meritocracy. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. So as you say, I'm gender pay equity advocate through and through. And my too much is too outspoken, too opinionated, and have no issue making people uncomfortable if needs be when it comes to these things. So it started for me. Originally, I was an office worker, public servant, writing reports that nobody read, waste of time. It got very frustrating.
Yeah, waste of time.
Really, I was like, what am I contributing really of value here? And there was no fulfillment. I was just going through the motions. And then my sister died unexpectedly, and it completely just upended my life. It turned my world inside out and upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who has been through the dark night of the soul, you will know that it just became impossible to play the game. I just could not pretend to care about pointless shit anymore. And I decided I just needed to do something different and I wanted to make a difference. The way I decided to do that originally was to become a social worker. I thought I could work on the ground, fruits of my labor, really help people. But during the course of the training, I learned I was going to have to do 6 months of full-time unpaid work to prove my worth in the profession. And I decided that it wasn't worth defaulting on my mortgage to train in a short staff profession that would never pay me well enough to recoup the debt.
Isn't that
Because the thing that pissed me off about this so much is police, prison officers, apprenticeships, the military, they're all paid to train. But if you want to train as a nurse, a teacher, a social worker, a midwife, you will pay to do the training yourself. And the financial implications of this, you will be punished financially for that decision all the way through to retirement. It never pays off to go into one of these professions financially.
And it's really interesting because those professions are the change makers of the world. The ones that we hand over to our children, the ones that we go to, the ones that I was in hospital for nearly 7 weeks that cared for me, that are, don't take me down that path. Yeah, that's interesting. So you decided then and there to then follow the path and go, I'm not going to do this because I'm not being...
Because it's exploitation. And if anyone thinks, oh, that's a strong word, it's been called out by the United Nations as a form of exploitation. It is exploitation. And it's because we have this normalized culture that as women, we just exist to serve the greater good, even at our own expense. But I always say that you can't buy groceries with gratitude. We all need an income of some sort.
Yeah.
The expectation that the stress that it put people under to do all of this unpaid labor for years at a time and collecting debt. It's totally unsustainable. And then the rest of the world is going, why have we got a crisis of staff in healthcare? And I'm like, let me tell you.
And teaching, education.
Yeah, exactly. This is the root of it. It all comes back to this. So I dropped out and I decided I was going to run a campaign for paid training in female-dominated professions, which I did, got all the way through to Parliament, presented my petition, spoke in the select committee, and they were like, that's nice, thank you. We're not going to do anything about it because it's not an immediate solution to staffing crisis that's been decades in the making.
Just say.
So I was like, I'm still mad about this. I still want to disrupt the gender pay gap. How else can I do it?
Yeah.
I've realized that you can't reason with a system that's determined not to change.
You can't reason with a system that's determined not to change. Now, let's just say that again. You can't reason with a system that's not determined to change. Well, isn't that interesting? For a lot of us change makers out there that said, you know what, man, I'm out of here. I'm actually going to do it my way.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I've landed now. And the further you can get out of the conventional system, the more freedom you do have. And for me personally, like the ethics and integrity of business really, really matters. But the freedom to not be confined to these very narrow bands and someone else's determination of my value in accordance with a particular framework or something like that is liberating. And I want to use this freedom to really call other women to discover it for themselves, essentially. So now I'm continuing to develop my thought leadership on gender pay equity because the working world is changing really fast, and AI is replacing a lot of office work, particularly prestigious professions, which have historically been done by men. And so we're in this really unique time in history right now where we have the potential to completely redefine the value of work.
Yeah.
And the professions that are going to become irreplaceable and unreplicable by AI are in-person, people-facing, nursing, teaching, midwifery, social work, therapy, all of these traditionally women's work professions, which have massive social return on investment. And so now is our opportunity to start thinking, well, what does the future look like? What do we want to contribute? And how do we actually finally receive the recognition for actually just how important this work is? And so instead of fighting this antiquated system that is dismantling itself right now, we're at
Isn't
a
it?
real turning point in an economic cycle. And so instead of shouting at a system that's going to die, we just let it die and we start planning for the future of how we want to do that. And so my work now is really at the leadership level, creating the infrastructure and the frameworks that we want to see. And on the one-to-one level is actually what I've realized is that system change without personal reclamation is just shouting into the void. And technically we have law and policy that says you can't pay men and women differently. 80% of gender pay gap inequity is caused by unexplained factors, which is just unconscious bias, really. Which
We
is
know how all that works. The little deals that are done, percentage, not yet. Yeah.
exactly. Stop fighting the old, start building the new. But a huge part of that is I can do all the system change I like, but we need women at the front. We've got to change this culture of being, oh, thank you. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Thank you so much, to being like, hey, this is my skill and experience. If you want to employ me, this is what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Like fundamental shift in energy and how we perceive ourselves, and recognizing that we're not going to keep negotiating our worth and we're not going to keep backing down because, oh, well, like, I guess I've only had 3 years experience and this other guy, we just talk ourselves down and we talk ourselves out of stuff so much. And I
We
say this because
so
I've done it,
do. Why do you think we do that?
because we are conditioned to believe that our contribution in the world has no financial value, right? We do all the domestic work unpaid. We do most of the world's volunteer work. We look after our own children. We look after other people's children. We look after our parents. We end up being the crisis manager. We'll volunteer at school sports, on the school board, who goes on school trips with the kids, like all those kind of things. Like, it's just, we are so deeply conditioned to believe that our time and our skill and our experience has no value. So when it comes to the workforce, the idea that we could ask for anything can feel really icky.
Yeah.
And so that's the change, is the recognition of honestly our own worthiness, like knowing deep in our bones that we are worthy of all that we have and all that we want.
I remember when I left my last ops role, and my job, because I was the yes person, right? Conditioning, right? My own trauma conditioning. Yeah, I'm amazing. I can do everything. I had an issue saying no. And when I left that role, guess what happened? My role was split into 3. Yep. And each person was getting 6 figures. No, 6 figures. Yeah. And I'm like, pissed me off. And I'm like, no more. I quit. I did cold turkey. I quit. I said, I'm out of here. I know what I'm going to do, but I'm out of here. I'm just going to do it for myself. And if I fall on my face, I'm going to do it for myself. So henceforth, I'm here. And I don't totally agree with you because, at some point we do need to make a stance, and we need to empower women and younger generations to be the future pacers, our children. And this includes not only women, but because the education needs to come from the male force as well. So their mindset changes. So they don't fall into the trap. I believe that they don't fall into the trap of what we did, because it's easy for the female to change, but the male may not. So then there's going to be that future generational pacing. This is just such a good topic.
Yeah. And
It's in my thing, in my gut. I'm like, I want to vomit from like, until I met you, I never realized how much this had affected my world.
wow. Yeah, it's huge. And I think one of the things that I found, because I wrote my master's thesis on the unpaid placements, and one of the things that I found so interesting was most of the women had never even questioned, should I be paid? It was just, this is what I have to do to get through my training. Of course,
Yeah,
it's
this is
unpaid.
really interesting because my ex-husband was a barrister and he decided to, you know what, I'm over the grime. I will go back and get my DipEd, Diploma of Education, my Master's in Education and teach. And then when he did his placement and it was unpaid placement, and he goes, this is ridiculous. I'm not 2 years old. This is not sustainable. So he quit what he actually loved for that reason. And that's sad because we need educators. We don't have teaching staff.
Yeah, and I think people really underestimate how hard this work is. I had someone question me the other day saying, you know, that it's about supply and demand because, there's only so many pro footballers in the world. So, of course, they get paid well, but anyone can be a nurse. And I thought, I challenge you on that. I really deeply challenge you to believe that
Oh,
anyone can be a nurse
well, I
because
want to be a soccer player.
yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. I was like, I'll become a pro footballer then. Easy. So easy. But, and even the supply and demand issue doesn't stack up, right? Because as we've said, we have chronic workforce shortages in these sectors. You would think they would be throwing money at people to go into these sectors, and they're just not, because we
They're
don't believe
not.
that because we rely far too heavily on the goodwill of service-driven people. We rely too heavily on good hearts. And that's why the entire NGO sector is chronically underfunded and underpaid, because they know that people will do it because they love it. And so we become perpetuators of the problem, because the reality is we will do it because we believe in it and it really matters. And then we realize that we're actually perpetuating the very issue we're advocating against.
Yeah, and we burn out and we drop out and we leave the system and then there's a hole again. So how are you going about making this change? That's what I want to know. So how do people tap into you? Where can we find you? How are you holding the flag?
You can find me on any social media platform, Bex Howells. And the way I'm doing this now is building a movement from the ground up and
Good.
really inviting my first movers to come and work with me one-to-one, really like tap into the recognition of value starts with us. And when we fundamentally change the way that we see ourselves, we change the way that we show up in the world. And that has a massive ripple effect, because we role model that to our female friends, to our male friends, to our partner, to our children.
Yeah.
And honestly, do not underestimate the impact that you have in the world around you, and actually how powerful changing the way you see yourself changes not your life, but everyone's life around you. So come be a first mover in this movement. It's going to
Absolutely.
be fun. It's going to be exciting.
And I have
And
frozen
I'm going
again.
to keep growing this,
No,
because
we have
the
frozen.
solution is
We
women.
have
It
frozen.
really is,
Houston,
whether
we
we
have
like it or
frozen.
not. And I want to be super clear as well. This isn't about women
What is
taking
going on with
more
my internet
responsibility
today?
on.
I think Bex
This
is
is about
talking on
getting
her
really
own,
clear on, this is
but
my
I can edit this one
responsibility,
out
and all
because
of
the
this stuff
conversation
is
was
not.
amazing.
So having that real laser
I think we're
focus
just
and
going to
that real
wait for
deep
the
precision
connection
on
to
what you want to
connect
do, so that
again.
it's focused and
I'm sure you can
energizing and
hear me. I think
exciting,
you can
and
hear
we can
me.
do some really good shit in the
It
world.
is.
That's my goal.
It'll start up again. What is going on with my internet today? There you are. I don't know. I don't know what happened. So we'll just continue on and I'll edit it. Now let me just. Water is good for the soul. Water is good for the soul. So where to from here? What's your next step?
My next step is to move to Melbourne because unfortunately in
Well,
New
this is
Zealand.
interesting. Why do you want to move?
I mean, firstly, I love Melbourne. I'm living in Wellington, New Zealand now, and Melbourne really is a bigger version of Wellington with better
Please.
public transport and less wind. So I am very
So
excited.
if anyone's not been to Wellington, it's like this.
It's pretty out the gate. But unfortunately in New Zealand at the moment, we have a very far right government who have just disbanded $12 billion worth of gender pay equity claims on the grounds that it's a cost saving, even though any economics 101 will tell you that that's completely contrary to solution, because The gender pay gap in New Zealand at the moment is $17.6 billion a year.
If we were to break that down, how much that would impact a family if it was equal, there would be money flowing in the economy. Does that make sense?
Because the more, and women spend money so well because we invest it in our families, we invest it in our communities, we invest it in ethical investing opportunities. And the more you have women working in the economy, the more we're spending money in the economy and the less reliance you have on things like family welfare and tax credits and things like that. So
Yes.
it's exactly that. It's the flow of money.
Yeah.
But now this decision has completely stagnated the economy. Gender pay equity teams have been disbanded. So the government just is like trying to get rid of gender pay equity altogether. And much as I want to stay and fight, that I am one person. And I learnt the hard way with the campaign that there is only so much you can do.
And you have to do
So,
you, boo.
yeah, truly. And it has to be sustainable for me as well. And I can't keep fighting a system that's determined not to change.
I love that. I love that you said that earlier. I love that. So, a question for you. If you were to look in the mirror at your younger self, what would you tell her based on the information and the experience you have right now?
I was a very rebellious teenager. I had a very deep disregard for authority, and I was very much seen as difficult and a problem. And actually, what it was is I refused to comply with things that are harming my family, actually. And what I would
Wow.
say is my rebellious nature is nothing to be ashamed of. And in fact, it's actually my superpower, because what I didn't know then that I know now is that I have such an unwavering moral compass. I have such a strong sense of right and wrong, and I will not be swayed on what I believe in. And I think that is such a gift in a world where we are told to sit down, shut up, and just, yeah, exactly. So I will stand up for what I believe in. I will not bow to authority, because ultimately hierarchy is all made up. Like, this is all just a massive game of Monopoly when we really think about it. And I'm not willing to compromise who I am and what I believe in. And honestly, being outspoken and standing up for what I believe in is my drug of choice.
I love that. Is my drug of choice. And you know what? The online world came up about, and all of a sudden there's all of us that are, this is my theory, the change makers that are, and that you think that we're everywhere, but we're not. We're actually we're still a minority online, because based on the population that we have in the world, I think we do this. We kind of hold the world. We kind of do
Yeah.
that. So I love that you said that. It's your drug of choice. Love that you got fire in your belly. I love the fact that you are going out there saying, you know what, this is not how it should be, and that we're a force to be reckoned with, that when we stick together, we will be able to move on. We will be able to then do more. And yes, it's okay to be selfish. Just saying. So, Bex, thank you so much for sharing your vision, mission, and your statement, drug of choice. You know where to get all of Beck's details, and I look forward to collaborating more with you and seeing you in person on the couch and seeing where this next step is going to be going, because we can only make these changes for our children and for bearers and future bearers. It's so cliche, but it is together. It's as simple as that. And it does come from your story. So, Bex, thank you so much for sharing it. You have a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever it is you're coming from. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.